Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your host, Yariv Wolok, and my guest stars here. Welcome back, Ryan Marker. Thank you for joining me, my friend. Thanks for coming back to the podcast.
No problem. Anytime. Glad to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing some updates about where you're at in your career as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Andy Gorel is my other guest for the night. Andy is one of our newest writers for Flyers Nitty Gritty. He just had a piece that came out. We're going to go over it later about outdoor games potentially this year. Andy, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining, buddy.
What's up, man? Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Cool. Yeah, no, excited. Excited to talk hockey because actually today started off as kind of like a boring hockey day. And as we're recording this, it's actually pretty good news that happened today, at least in the hockey world. The big new piece of information is that the announcement that the league, the players, the Players Association, and the league itself have finally come to an agreement financially and have agreed to move forward with at least a start date. So right now they're throwing out the date of January 13th as the start of the season, which is excellent to hear because we started hearing that things were creeping into February on, and as that goes, we lose games, we lose opportunity to train, just everything becomes a mess, more money lost, and so on and so on. But so far, we have a good date, and I'm excited. I want to hear both of your thoughts on this, about not just the start date itself of the 13th, but how much time you think the players have now to get ready. I mean, we're in December, beginning of December 8th as we record this. The start of the season is supposed to be January 13th. And then also how many games? I mean, at this point, I think we're looking at 48 to 60 games, somewhere in that range. But I'm interested to see. Ryan, I'm going to throw this at you first. What do you think about the announcement today?
I think the announcement's great. I mean, it's good to hear that we're going to have hockey back sooner than later. I mean, to have a start date of the 13th is huge. And to me, I mean, have they announced yet, like, when players are going to go back to training camp? Like, have they, had any talks about that? Or
I don't think specific talks yet as far as, dates. I think that tomorrow, which would be December 9th, there is a meeting with the ownership midday, I believe, that they're going to be talking about that and really revealing what their plans are.
Yeah, I mean, I feel as long as players are back in training camp by, the first week of January, I think they should be fine for a start date of the 13th. I mean, these guys are in great shape. They train all year long, and I think they would be fine with the January 13th start date.
Yeah, you don't think they'd have any problem do you think the younger or the older players would benefit in this scenario?
Honestly, a little bit of both, obviously, because being older, you have that experience of not specifically being through this, going through this stuff before, but, obviously just having more experience helps, but also being younger, I feel it's a little easier to get in tip-top shape over being an older guy.
Yeah, the start of the season overall.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, did we lose you?
I think he got up for a second.
There he is.
I apologize. We are one of the only families left with a landline phone, I guess, and I forget that's going to ring once in a while. So anyway, sorry to break up the flow there, but
it's all good.
It's all good,
buddy. Dude, it's all good. It's all good. It does not take away from the conversation. So let's go to you then, Andy. What do you think? What do you think about the beginning of the date? Beginning start.
Yeah. Obviously, it's kind of weird to be potentially 5 weeks out from first puck drop, but not. But I mean, I can't have much to say that is going to back up what Ryan said, being that he's a player. I've never played past the pond. It feels a little quick. But they're professionals. It's not like they're not working out. They know what's coming. So if they're gonna settle the business dispute, which it seems that they're getting closer to, then I would hope that they would be ready.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reality is that, and I don't really think that they had much of a choice. It's kind of like every day that they allow really this stuff to continue, and every day that they allow the clock to tick. It's literally money just kind of falling off the table, and they're already losing an insane amount. And most of them are going to lose money playing these games. I don't know if you guys heard, but there are some owners who, will look at their calculations at the end of the day and look that they're actually going to lose money playing these games. But this is a shared revenue business, so you don't really have much of a choice if the other owners want to play, because they have to save the league. Ryan, I'll throw this one back to you. What do you think the damage could be if they, I don't know, let's say they lost the entire season?
I mean, obviously, I think it's better to play and lose some money than not play at all and lose. Well, I mean, I guess you're still losing money regardless, but I just feel it's more important to play the games because, I mean, who wants to go a whole season without, any games being played? I don't think it's good for the viewership. I don't think it's good for anything. I think sports in general just need to be played, and it's a huge part of a lot of people's lives. And even though I play, but I watch the NHL every night, so I obviously want to see them playing.
Yeah, there's a huge trickle-down effect I think a lot of people don't realize. Like when I hear people say, just shut the games down already. Yeah, there's also all these people involved with jobs and careers. I've seen writers lose their jobs. They're all types of people are being affected by this that are surrounded by hockey. So I totally agree with you. And it's very important to the economy and the economy of hockey. Andy, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think, like you said, even though they're going to lose money, you kind of have to view it as an investment in the future. The more you don't have hockey, even as a diehard fan, without games, the less I think about it. The more I'm occupying my time with other things. And being the smallest of the big four sports in North America, you're really fighting for all your fans. So I guess the way I've actually been, I think of things like this, like investing in the future is actually like a music industry example. Back in 2009, Lady Gaga had a tour with Kanye. It was a headline tour it was a national arena tour, and Kanye pulled out. And she could either just cancel the tour and lose all the money, or still lose a lot of money because she had spent a bunch of money on her production and bring it to small theaters. And she sold everything out. And even though she lost a bunch of money on that tour, it created such a buzz to just keep pushing through that her next tour was the third highest grossing tour of all time or something like that. So I think when you're looking at businesses that face the public, that provide entertainment, it's important to think about not just the bottom line, but the bottom line for years to come. And ultimately, by stopping play, you're hurting momentum. In today's day and age, you're fighting for eyeballs with everything. There's so much media everywhere. So even if it's an abridged season and they're going to lose money, I think they got to go forward, especially as the underdog league. I think they should, keep their relationship with their fan base alive as best they can.
Well, let me ask you this, Andy. Will you see this season have an asterisk over it because of the way it is, or do you see it as, because we'll talk about it a little bit, but right, there's going to be realignment. There's a lot of changes, right? Like, do you see this as kind of like, no, this is just another season, and it is what it is?
I mean, the lockout seasons didn't have asterisks, correct? That cup doesn't have an asterisk. So neither did the COVID Cup, if you want to call it that. So I don't think it should. It's an abridged season. It's happened before. It's really, when you look at it, it's no different than the disputes that have happened in the past that have led to abridged seasons, except that there's an X factor, which is the pandemic. So I don't think it should. How do you guys feel?
I feel that there definitely shouldn't be an asterisk next to it because all the players have to deal with the same exact thing. So that's the way I look at it. I feel everyone's at a disadvantage. So I feel since everyone has to go through the same thing, everyone's on an even playing field.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with both of what you both said. And I think it's important to remember that it is also to just remember history. Like there was hockey during World War II. There was hockey during World War I as well. There were always sports during all kinds of chaos in the world, and there are no asterisks on those in history, and I totally agree with everything. I think it's actually kind of the beauty of this season is that it's, the people should give the ownership and all these people some credit. I know everybody likes to rip on them, but it's not that easy to come together. The NHLPA to agree on these money contracts while the world watches you make decisions and hates regardless of what you decide. So I think all said and done, when that puck drops on the 13th, the fact that they played those playoffs and they made it through the 13th, I mean, I can definitely appreciate that. Ryan, I bet as a hockey player, the fact that you know that there are business people who are always fighting to make sure hockey plays, I mean, I would assume you find some comfort in that.
Oh yeah, I definitely do, for sure. I mean, there's players. I mean, it's more than just being like a player. Like, you have to look at everything else like that everyone's doing, as in like the owners, the commissioners of these leagues. Like, they go through so much to make these things happen. It's more than just us players. Like, everything's got to align perfect for things to happen.
Well, I think this is a good point to transition. We're going to talk about this later, but I figured this is relevant now. So you haven't been playing as well right now, and for those who are not aware, Ryan plays in the FPHL. Or I'm sorry, the FPHL. Yes, I said that correctly. Mm-hmm. For the Watertown Wolves. He used to play for the Delaware Thunder. That's how we got in contact with him. Also through other ways. He's also from the area, from New Jersey. He hasn't been playing. Obviously, I don't believe you've been playing quite yet. What are your updates? I believe you have some updates on your league.
Yeah, so our league was supposed to start December 15th. That was like our original date.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, that was like our third date that we were supposed to have. We were supposed to originally start, obviously, like the normal time, like October 27th. That got pushed back to like November 17th and then December 15th. And now it's looking like we're going to be starting January 15th. And I know the league came up with some type of like proposal, like to like reduce travel, like stuff.
Okay.
And I don't know what I don't want to touch on it too much because I don't know what the exact like alignments are, but the way it sounds, it's definitely going to be very cost efficient for the teams, and definitely during this COVID situation, it'll reduce travel. So like, just say like, we won't be going from like Carolina Wednesday to like Illinois Friday and like Michigan Saturday. I think like they're trying to do something to where we're in like one state for 1 week and then we're home for the next week. And then I don't know, like it's kind of like a weird setup on what they're trying to do. But like from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's definitely the best thing to do for a league like us, only having like 10 teams. So
do you think they'll be better for you or worse from what you've heard so far for your personal schedule, right?
I mean, you mean normal like season or?
Yeah.
I think obviously a normal season
is
better, but for what's going on right now, I think it's our best option.
Okay. Fair enough. But so you feel satisfied. That's cool. And Andy, if you're not aware, the Delaware Thunder, it's like, I don't know if you heard anything that Ryan's been in, but I mean, he's played hockey with some very talented hockey players as well as himself, right? The league that he's in is guys who kind of mix in the ECHL as well, guys who maybe touch the AHL as well. We're talking about guys who have played pro hockey, D1 hockey. Ryan's been around that pretty much his whole life at this point. So, I think it's a good representation, maybe where the NHL is as well. I mean, do you think that at all, Ryan? That maybe the way your league is kind of looking at this is maybe they're kind of following the NHL?
In ways, yeah. But yeah, I would say, yeah, obviously what they do, we kind of piggyback off that a little bit. We try to do similar things.
Okay. All right. Well,
Brian, are you guys going to have, are you guys going to have spectators in any capacity?
That's actually a good question. I was actually just asking someone about that today. I think as of right now, where most of the teams are, I think a lot of the teams are allowed to have like 25% right now, except for Michigan, because Michigan's like on a complete lockdown right now. But we're hoping that changes by the time obviously hockey starts up. So I guess we'll have to see what happens. Everything's up in the air because you hear things about like the vaccine. It's hard to like tell exactly what's going to go on in the next month or so. So we're kind of just taking it day by day.
For sure.
Yeah. And I guess as we transition, I just want to point out that Ryan was one of the best players in his league as well. So if you guys don't know him, check him out because, it's pretty awesome. It's a local talent. And if you're from the area, like a lot of us are, I don't know, it's important. And maybe you'll get to see him playing locally because, Ryan, are you playing supposed to local tournament too, right? That got I think it got canceled, right? The Turkey Cup at Northeast Racquetball Club, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we were supposed to play in that, but it got canceled, obviously, due to COVID.
Yeah, due to COVID. Well, maybe if there's other stuff, but maybe you guys will catch Ryan in the area. He does play with some of the local guys as well every now and then, so it's pretty cool. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about a little bit of Flyers news here. Today, another piece of really good news. Now, let's get past like the kind of lockout bummer stuff. Phil Myers. I was actually going to start the day. I said this earlier. I was going to start the day thinking we were going to talk about maybe Phil Myers signing. It looks like today he signed. And it's funny. He signed at the price that we've kind of been talking about, at least on this podcast. And definitely other people I've talked to in the community for sure, and that you see on Twitter. But maybe the general consensus. But this is where I thought he would be. Way under Sanheim, and not way under, but $1 million under, because of, again, I mentioned this if you listen to other episodes, a reduced role, a smaller resume. He's not going to come in during COVID and demand the same contract as Sanheim or even more. So he gets 2.55 per year at $3 million. Andy, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you think about Phil Myers finally getting signed here at the 3-year deal?
I love it. I think Chuck did a great job. 2.5, like 3-year bridge deal. I know Chuck, when he first came in, he said that they were bullish on Phil Myers, and I was like, for good reason. I love it. I think it's obviously, like you said, he's going to sign at less than Sanheim or somebody like that, just because we're in a year where the numbers are being rolled back. But I mean, the Flyers still have like over $2 million in cap space now to play around with, which I'm thinking they'll probably hang on to. And that's if they can't move a piece. The signing of, well, I don't want to get completely into it, but we have a lot of pieces at D right now. I think Phil is very good, and he's very young, and he's shown a lot of positives. So, I mean, like for most of the year, I know he's up there in plus minus for rookies, which some people pay a lot of mind to that stat, some don't. But like plus 17, 16 points, I think it was 50 games played. That's good stuff for a young guy, especially a D-man. So I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Ryan, what do you think?
I totally agree with everything he said. He's a huge part of our team, and I think that we just honestly have to bow down to the Flyers organization for being able to get a deal done like this at like a price point like that. And like, especially with a lot of our sports, in Philly in general, we deal with some pretty shitty GMs. So to finally have someone knows what they're doing, it's good to see.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time the Flyers in particular have been in a position to not only be aggressive of a team, but also be in a position where they can afford to negotiate. Because, like, let's say Phil Myers does decide he doesn't want the money here. Okay, well, there are a bunch, not that I would get rid of Phil Myers in any sense, but there are a bunch of other defensemen, young ones who are coming up, Igor Zamula, Cam York, just to name a couple right off the top of my head. Those are guys who can step into the NHL within the next year or two. So you have all these options that they can get away with getting Phil Myers at 2.55 for 3 years, which, by the way, is very cheap for a guy who's most likely going to be playing top pairing with probably Ivan Provorov next year. I could definitely see that being the top pairing, and I imagine they're probably going to go into the season at least trying it out as a pairing that could see Phil Myers maybe even playing 21 minutes a night, where he was going like 17 minutes a night before, or maybe 20 minutes a night. Ryan, I'll throw it back to you, and then Andy. What do you think about that pairing?
That pairing is unbelievable. Obviously, anyone that plays with Provorov anyone that plays with him is obviously going to be in a comfortable position, because Provorov, in my opinion, is, no matter what the rankings say, that people, I don't know how I still bring that up all the time, how he wasn't in like the top 20 defensemen. I mean, come on now. I mean,
it's a joke.
I mean, in my opinion, he's a top 5 overall defenseman, and anyone that plays with him is obviously gonna.
I don't disagree with that statement.
Yeah, he's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I hope it'll be interesting to see how, like you said, how the pairs are played with this year. We're gonna have Provorov on the top pair, obviously. Hopefully he doesn't regress. Hopefully Niskanen brought it out of him, and now he's our number one, which I think will be the case. you would think they'd put Myers up with them, but Myers Sanheim was also kind of a deadly pair. I just don't know who you would slot in at number one D-man. You're not going to throw Haig, Gostisbehere, Braun. None of them are going to be on the first pair. And then Gustafsson. I don't know much about Gustafsson. From what I understand, it's a good depth signing. Maybe could slot in the second pair. So it'll be interesting. Signing Gustafsson makes me wonder what the fate of Gostisbehere will be if there's a way to move that contract, maybe retain salary, because 4.5 right now, especially with these rollbacks, is looking a little hefty for the production. He's production and just play overall the last few years, not really using him a lot. So I don't know, but I like the Myers signing, and I think he's going to continue on the trajectory, which is very good.
Yeah, it's an the whole defense is an interesting situation in general, and a lot of question marks. Because I don't think Gustafsson was brought in here to play top pairing, and that's why I listen. I think there's a chance he could play with Provorov, but that's kind of my question mark. Is outside of Phil Myers or Travis Sanheim or Gostisbehere a few years ago, there's nobody really capable of playing top pairing, and that's why I was like, Phil Myers seems like that guy. He did it with Thomas Chabot for the World Juniors program. He almost like I've said it before, he is like the perfect complementary top pairing defenseman. Like the guy, if you have a number one like Provorov, a guy who plays 25 minutes a night, maybe he'll be playing 30 minutes a night like Doughty by the end of this, 27 minutes a night. But you put a guy like Phil Myers, who's 6'5", mobile, offensive, literally has all the tools. He's not as polished as Sanheim. But that's why I think Sanheim can kind of carry that second unit, and then you can kind of mix in maybe a Gustafsson, maybe a Gostisbehere, maybe even a Braun. I don't know, even a Haig. I'm not sure exactly what they would mix up there, but there are a lot of question marks. The Ghost thing is interesting because I have a feeling in the current situation, what's going on with the market and the issues with the cap and whatnot, there is a chance that the Flyers might ride Ghost out and just expose him to expansion at this point, and really just see, hey, maybe he turns it around. Maybe he gets back to the point where he put up 65 points, and then we look like geniuses because we have Ghost and Gustafsson, and we have one of the most mobile defenses in the NHL. It's a little risky, but I can see them playing into that. Ryan, do you think there's any chance of that?
Yeah, I do, actually. I was talking to someone the other day about if they were going to get rid of Ghost, keep him. I honestly think they're going to keep him and take the chance to see if he turns his play around. And I think, obviously, from what we've seen in the past, I think that there always is a chance of that happening. I think it's worth the gamble.
Yeah. And if we look at, and we've talked about this, I've talked about this quite a bit, Chuck Fletcher's past, trading Burns. Again, he was a little younger than Ghost at the time. He was 26 years old. I don't know if Ghost is Brent Burns, but Brent Burns was playing forward at a certain point because they didn't even trust him on D anymore. And then once he hit his 30s, all of a sudden he's putting up like 70 points a year. And you're like, okay, what happened? I don't know if that's going to happen with Ghost, but maybe in their mind it's like, well, why even worry about eating cap or, potentially getting less than you want or just moving him at the wrong time? You're not up against the cap. You're one of the wealthiest teams, just dollar amount in the league. We're backed by Comcast. What do you have to lose kind of thing? To your point, Andy, as well.
My qualm with Ghost really right now is the fact that he's signed through 23-24. If he turns it around, I mean, that could be a good thing. But you're looking at, I mean, I just have cap friendly here right now. So those books in 23-24. Carter Hart has to get re-signed next. It's not going to be crazy because he's an RFA, but it's probably going to be significant. There's, you know what I'm saying? We have prospects. So I think we have to do everything we can. The Flyers have everything they can to not mortgage the future either. I think this team could be good for a long time because when you look at, let's even look past their current core of Giroux and Voracek and some of these guys. You got guys like Lindblom, Konechny, Farabee, even Frost, hopefully Cam York. You have a good young prospect pool here.
Oh, yeah.
So, the window's open, and so you want to go for it, but it's tough because you also you want to keep the window open. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, there's no right answer.
No, yeah, it's almost like maybe there doesn't need to be an answer, right? Like, it's like I get all these things that we're balancing, but it's like none of it's really an issue. Like, as of right now, the Flyers have cap room, right? And maybe they won't next year, but we lose players to injuries in a heartbeat. We've watched that happen. It's almost kind of like you're like, well, let's just wait and see. Because what if they expose Jake Voracek, which I don't think is going to happen. They expose him, and all of a sudden he gets taken from the Flyers, and there's $8 million just taken off the cap. Or they move him at expansion, or they move JVR, and they give up a first-round pick to move JVR because they try to get rid of the salary for whatever reason, you know. I just feel like all that stuff is kind of solvable. But I agree with you. There is a window here of like management because you could lose some of these young players too, which you don't want to do, especially for aging vets who maybe are a diminishing return. So you might have to make a move to get rid of
you're right. For this season, they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that could be enough to, like you said, have something else happen. You don't know what's going to happen. So.
Yeah. I will say this too, positivity towards the cap. One, we do get $2.5 million back next year. We lose the buyouts from this year. Then we'll probably buy somebody else out realistically. But what I did hear, and this is Chris Marr actually hit me up with this. So Elliot Friedman had this in one of his pieces that the cap, the agreement, the financial agreement that they came to actually means was based off the implication that the cap would go up by some unstated amount. Now, it's not going to go up by much, but it could go up by, I don't know, $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. That's not a large number, but we were looking at maybe $3 million to $7 million before. So even 1.5, that's another player in the league, maybe 2 bare minimum players in the league. So, or an ability to sign a guy that you couldn't sign before. For a team like the Flyers, that could happen twice over the next couple of years. You could have your Carter Hart money right there. So these are all things that I look at that, like, I hear you, but I feel like it's manageable. And when I see Fletcher make deals like the one with Myers today, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, he's done a great job, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. You guys want to say anything else on that? I'm sorry, I didn't want to move on quickly.
No, you're good.
No, that was perfect.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk about another player. So Nolan Patrick. There's been kind of a somewhat of an update. He's kind of getting a thumbs up. This came from an update ago. Inside word now is, after asking questions internally, is that Patrick is feeling the best that he's felt in a very long time. That it looks like he probably is projected to start the season. And hopefully, play third line center for the Flyers. I was actually I had NHL 21 popped open. I was playing with the lines. I do that kind of on a daily basis. And I really look at this lineup. Without Nolan Patrick, I don't see how he's not healthy if the Flyers did nothing to negate the third line center problem. Like they did nothing. We have the same options we had last year except for Lazinski. So it tells me they feel pretty confident in him coming back. Ryan, I'll go to you up first on this one. What do you think about Nolan Patrick, and what do you think about his status?
I think it's huge hearing that. He's doing great, and obviously, like you said, he said that he was feeling the best that he's felt in a while. Because let's not forget, we did pick him number 2 overall in the draft behind who was it that year?
Nico Hischier.
Oh, behind. Yeah,
Hischier from the Devils. So And there were a lot of people that thought that he should have went number 1 that year. And I just think that he's huge for our future, and to have him in the lineup, I think he could be a really good player for us in the future, for sure. And I think he's only going to get better the more consistently he's in the lineup.
And just to add to that deal, Ryan, and I'll go to you, Andy, in a second. Just to add to that, if you guys go back, and you can research this on YouTube, go back, and I did a crazy amount of research on Nolan Patrick, especially at the time. If you go back, you listen to Craig Button talk about Nolan Patrick. They weren't talking about Nolan Patrick like, oh, Nolan Patrick is just, could be the number 1. He was slated as the next guy, not in the same tier as Austin Matthews. But again, you can listen to Button say it himself. They had Matthews, they had Eichel. They were talking about all these centers, all these fantastic centers that came out either 1 or 2. And he was like straight up, he's like Nolan Patrick for 3 years in a row was slated to go first overall. He was a 16-year-old, came onto the Wheat Kings, finished as a 17-year-old as the MVP of that championship team that had Ivan Provorov on it. This kid was a monster day one. He was always slated to be maybe the next top pick in the draft, but like for 3 years running since the age of 15. So huge reputation.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the reason why he didn't go number 1 was due to an injury, right?
So the backstory specifically is he had a torn abdominal But he actually had 2 of them. He got surgery. The doctors missed the second one. We, the Flyers, have the expert actually in abdominal core surgeries here in Philadelphia. He's actually at the Navy Yard. My friend actually saw him as well for the same injury. So he's actually the world's leading expert is here in Philly. So if you think about that, the Flyers recognized that he had the surgery done here, and that's actually why Nolan Patrick was with the team, in my opinion, the entire time and didn't go back to Brandon for a year because I think they wanted to keep an eye on him. They wanted to keep an eye on his abdominal core surgery. So that's where I think that is.
No, completely makes sense.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy. Please step right in.
Good.
What are your thoughts on
that? I was just saying that's cool. I didn't know that about the abdominal thing, and obviously Penn is great. But it's crazy because like whenever you look at, I mean, you could just apply this to anything really. Whenever there's a setback, it's like the world is ending. It's like, oh my God, like he's 22 years old. You know, it's probably hopefully a bump in the road. Like in 2 years, if he's lighting it up, it's like nobody's even going to remember the fact that he was out for a year. Like it's been such a big deal this year. And the fact that he's been scrimmaging and all that, like those are good signs because it doesn't really matter the skill level of who he's playing with. It's just that he's playing. If they think that he is medically off to skate and to hit and to do all these things, then he's on a good trajectory. And like Ryan said, he said, you know, Hischier was picked above him. That draft class, like the quality of player, you guys are talking about being slated at number 1, the quality of player that the organization deemed him to be when drafting, and we all know the Flyers have drafted well over the past couple of years, is second overall ahead of, it was Pettersson, Makar, Heiskanen. Like, look at these guys. They're all fantastic. They're unbelievable players.
Yeah,
so
Hischier as well.
Hischier is phenomenal. So they're NHL level studs. And, you know, again, it is a draft. Like, you know, players don't always pan out. Sometimes there's an injury. But for people to just be like, oh, he's a bust, or, oh, like, he could be over this in 6 months and it could just be a memory and he could be back. Okay, so maybe he becomes a phenomenal player at the NHL level at 24 instead of 22. In the grand scheme of things, who cares?
I think
we're rooting for him. We all are, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think people are impatient. I mean, talk about injuries. Simone Gagne missed an entire year. He's my favorite player, at least historically. He missed an entire year due to a concussion, neck injury, blah, blah, blah. Came back, was still an awesome player. And Sidney Crosby missed a year. It definitely happens. And then, you know, you kind of just move past it. And I totally agree with a lot of what you said about him overall.
I want to bring up one other thing too. It's when the season was started last year, it was like, oh, Nolan Patrick, like migraine's always not playing. He's not playing. What's going on? And then the Oscar Lindblom diagnosis came and just completely took the spotlight. And it was like you forgot about Nolan. And then miraculously, this blows. It's still mind blowing the fact that Lindblom played 2 games in the bubble. Mm-hmm. But it was like Nolan was the big talking point, and then it was like Oscar's issue was so paramount. It was like, holy shit. And then he got over that, and now it's like back to Nolan again. It's just crazy how the story, the narrative has shifted from like the main issue, and now we're back talking about this. But hopefully, it's looking like it's behind him. So
yeah, they also treat the two very differently, I find, which unfairly. Where both of them are dealing with a very serious issue, and Nolan seems to get crapped on for it, and Lindblom gets uplifted, which 100% deservingly, and Lindblom is fantastic and deserves every bit of that love. Don't get me wrong, but I just think the fact that Nolan gets like the hate, I do not understand that whatsoever.
No, it's crazy.
It's absolutely insane, and people should remember that I remember this very well. Everybody wanted to throw Sean Couturier away. I remember wanting to trade Couturier for Subban because Subban was so much better than Couturier because he didn't develop.
Can you
quickly.
Imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if that happened?
And now Couturier's like the best 2-way center in the league almost.
Yes. And
pretty much. Even Bergeron.
Yeah.
I mean, it took longer than people like, but sorry, that's the way it goes. Honestly, that's typically the way it goes. Look at Scott Lawton. Most people I assumed a couple years ago that we wouldn't be able to protect him in the expansion draft. Now most people would be terrified to expose him. He'd be the first person taken. Probably if he was one of those players exposed, he'd be gone in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. He was our targeted he was the targeted like trade piece for the Flyers this year at the deadline.
Of
Chuck
course.
Fletcher said there were a lot of GMs calling about him. Back to what you said too about Nolan versus Oscar, the way people view it. I think you really have to like examine probably social stigmas for that around, migraines, which a lot of people don't really resonate with. I feel like cancer is something that a lot of people deal with from a friend or a family member.
True.
And yeah, I think if